Hello, Magic Weaver. Welcome back to the Weaving Magic podcast. I'm your host, Tara Webb.
And I'm your host, Alyssa Lilly.
And I almost called myself Alyssa Lilly because I was looking at Alyssa. And we have a guest today, an amazing friend of ours, Munirah. Thank you for popping on. We're talking about pee breaks and shimmying and saying people's names weird before. So get ready for all the amazing just little tidbits of this episode. But before we dive into that, Munirah, how do you weave magic into your daily life?
Hello, Tara. Hello, Alyssa. I'm so grateful to be here. How do I weave magic into my daily life? I feel like in the last year, I've honed in a lot on my intuition. And so I ask my intuition, how and what do I need in my day-to-day life? In the past, it used to be every day I have to meditate. Now I feel really into my body. So sometimes it could just be I need to do a cacao ceremony today just to feel some love, some self-love. Sometimes it's breath work. Sometimes I just need to give myself a hug. And whatever I feel when I wake up, I keep practicing that throughout the whole day. Because that's just really tapping into me, what I need. And that makes me feel magical.
I like that you do it throughout the entire day instead of just one time, because it makes it even more intentional. I like that idea in the practice.
Do you intentionally pause to check in throughout the day? How do you remind yourself to check in with your body, or is it just so ingrained at this point?
I love this question because it's been a practice to get it ingrained. I've been practicing spirituality now for about 4 years, three to 4 years. And I'm a yoga teacher, right? So I practice yoga. And one thing that I really want to bring into this space is the Yoga Sutra, which is the verses that we yoga teachers align ourselves to. And the first Yoga Sutra which means only in the moment of now can yoga happen. So just by incorporating and embodying this practice, it reminds me it's every day. It's every single moment. If I want to practice yoga, it has to be every single moment. So sometimes how it can show up is on a day where I'm practicing some self-love because I wake up and I'm feeling lonely or I'm feeling empty and I do a cacao ceremony. I remind myself, if I have that feeling coming up again throughout the hours of the day, I'm oh yes, I did this today and I'm coming back to that emotion again. How can I tap into that emotion again? And I don't really have an alarm to remind myself. It's really, at this point, everything can remind me of my intention and that magic that I'm weaving throughout the day.
How did you, how did you get to that point? I know you started talking about it a little bit. For me, I feel sometimes I forget. One of the things I'm working through right now is forgetting to eat. I don't realize I'm hungry until I'm starving. And I feel there's having to do alarms on my phone every 2 hours to remind me to pause and take a break. And I'm very integrated with my body, but here recently I've just felt that disconnect. So I'm curious of how have you felt ingrained and had days where you're not, and how do you bridge that gap?
I feel some days it's harder to feel like I connect with myself, especially when emotions are really hard. But, okay, let's take it back. So for example, for me, a week ago, I injured my back. I had this back injury, and as a yoga teacher, this can be very unsettling because it's how can I teach yoga asana, and identities coming up in my head about what I think my students will think about me. So what happened in that moment was, first of all, I felt bad about myself, and I allowed myself to feel bad. I allowed myself to not jump to the forward moment of let's fix this situation. But I was oh my goodness, I have back pain, it sucks, I can't move, I feel so old. And I just allowed myself to feel all of that. And then the practice of realizing that, okay, this is everything that's happening to me is a gift for me to grow and become more myself. So then what I realized from that, okay, I can learn what it's like to be injured. And if I want to teach my students that yoga is for everybody, meaning whether you're injured or not, whether you obviously with permission from your doctor to practice yoga, I need to lead that. So it was me going to class and being today I wanted to have someone lead the class to do the demo because I don't feel good. But then I realized if I am injured and I decide someone else is going to lead, it means I'm not taking into account that my space is accessible to everybody. So then I decided on that day, I'm going to practice how it feels good for me, and you will have the options to take more and more steps. So it's really a practice. Like yoga practice is a practice. It's always about coming back to, my intention is that I get to know myself a lot more. I get to know my blind spots, our shadow side, limiting beliefs, and it's now to the point that I realize anything that's coming up in my life, it's always a lesson. It's always a lesson. It's a gift. So with, go ahead.
I was going to say, I really love that you're just like, I'm going to show up as I am. And you had to go through that process of working through your shadow, but then it was like, okay, I can still show up for my intention where I'm currently at today.
100%. And when I said that, I was so scared. I was like, oh no, what are my students going to think? But people started smiling in class. They're like, yeah. And then they were nodding their head. They were smiling. And I'm like, yeah, this is exactly why I'm teaching. I'm not teaching to be the person that's like a gymnast and doing all the headstands and all this inaccessible poses, mostly for normal people. I'm not that teacher. I want to practice yoga and to share yoga so that we all transform into the person that finds magic in their whole life. Like they realize that they are magical, that they realize everything they do is magical. And at the end of the day, we all pass away, right? And my intention is that at the end of our lives, like we feel like we are happy with ourselves and with our life and what we've created.
And it brings you back to the beginning too, because I know when we become so good at something or we've done something for so long, and then, for example, an injury sets us back, you're almost once again starting at beginner stage. And so it's also that great reminder of people coming in as beginners, and they're always worried and nervous about how they're going to show up because people are so more experienced in them and all this kind of stuff. And I love this reminder once again of just how yoga is more than this intense practice. It's an everyday thing. And that's something I learned when I was doing Qigong with some people that taught me that. And I was like, hold on, my kid's doing something. And I had to like walk over and manage them. And she was like, can we do this with more, this is probably the incorrect word, mindfulness, essentially. Like, Qigong isn't, I'm practicing it in this one moment. And then I step out of this moment. And it's like, stop what you're doing. What are you doing? It's very much of the taking that presence with you throughout the day of, okay, how am I going to handle this? That calmness. And so it sounds exactly like what yoga is, of you're taking it throughout your day. It's not like, I'm on the mat, I'm off the mat, I'm done.
It's a life practice.
Yes.
It's a life practice, 100%. I like to remind my students as well, like most of us practice yoga for an hour. If you go to a studio, you're practicing for 60 minutes to 75 minutes, and your day is 24 hours. Right? It's like literally one slice of your whole day. And it's only in that 1 hour or the 75 minutes where you're practicing mindfulness, practicing self-connection, practicing compassion, practicing forgiveness, practicing your strength, your discipline. And then after that, you're like, yeah, it's gone. But then we don't integrate all of that stuff. Right? There's so much potential in bringing all of that knowledge onto the transformation of the mat.
So let's say we have someone who is only doing yoga in that one slice of pie of their day. Because I like pie. Now I'm hungry. It's fine. If we have someone who only practices yoga in that one sliver and they don't know where to start to integrate it throughout, what would you tell them?
So usually when we begin like a asana practice, it's always, what is your intention? So some people come in with the intention of not having stress, releasing the stress, or not thinking about their work, or having space for themselves. So if we already have that one intention during the asana practice, sometimes we can take that intention and bring it out to the other hours of the day. So for example, like I don't want to have stress, which is like the end result is I don't want to have stress. But what is causing you stress? So for example, if it's I'm struggling at work, and therefore it's causing stress. I'm struggling at work. So looking at, okay, what is making you struggle at work? Is it lack of time management? Is it not having boundaries? Is it not being able to, because you forget to eat? So looking at that and then taking that as the intention for the rest of the day. So not having boundaries, meaning the rest of the 23 hours, like how can you practice setting your boundaries? Or how can you communicate better, express yourself better throughout the 23 hours of the day? Or struggling with finding time to eat, it's okay, maybe then organizing or preparing food so that you never have to think about that again. It's always going to be there. So
I love that. It's like I feel like we get caught up so much in setting, here's my intention for the day. It seems so simple, but it's so important to peel back those layers of where is that root. And I love that.
You hear that in yoga practice in general, even when you're doing a quick video or something, what's your intention? And you're like, okay, yeah, I'm setting intention for this, but you don't think about it rippling out. And I think that has partly to do with the fact that we've turned yoga into a health exercise.
It's a workout.
Yes, it's a workout versus it being your everyday life, being a spiritual practice, no matter who you connect with, it being that ability to transport you. But instead, people are like, oh, I get to work out and I did my yoga for the day, I did my exercise, and I'm done. Check off the list.
I've sweated. I've done it all.
Yes.
I'm good. Like my day, I can begin my day.
And that's also, that's also the same thing as breath work too. Like, I did my breath work today. Dude, you're breathing every fucking second of the day. Your breath work is never done.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm guilty.
Oh, absolutely. I feel a little attacked. It's fine.
With love.
A safe space, okay?
Attacked with love. I love it.
I've seen an image of, I'm sorry, like attack, like a bear hug. Like, I just see this like big thing like tackling on the couch. Anyways, go ahead.
So I taught a yoga for beginners workshop I think a month ago. And so I had like already pulled out a couple of yoga sutras, so that these verses that I really resonate with, that my teacher taught us. And so I've already shared like the first sutra, right? Yoga Sutra 1.1, Atha Yoga Anusasanam, which is yoga only exists in the moment of now.
What is sutra? Hold on, because I want to make sure.
Sutra. Okay, I just want to also make sure that I'm not messing it up. A yoga sutra is a collection of short verses that serves as a guide for the practical and theoretical aspects of yoga that we can practice to attain liberation from suffering.
So is that spoken? Is that the way that you go through the movements?
No, it's literally a book that's written by this sage or scholar called Patanjali. And there's a whole lot of short verses in there to help us understand the purpose of practicing yoga. And one of the funny things is, as a yoga teacher, you will learn that the word asana, when it's said in the Yoga Sutras, has nothing to do with a workout. So the word, so it says one of the sutras, so it's like a weave, a golden weave, a thread. Okay, a sutra is like a thread. One of this thread says Sthira Sukham Asanam. Asanam, okay, which comes from the word asana, which means yoga is a comfortable, steady seat. Doesn't mention headstands, doesn't mention handstands, doesn't mention splits, doesn't mention the different poses that we practice in yoga. It literally says Sthira Sukham Asanam. Yoga is a comfortable, steady seat. Because the whole point of practicing yoga is that we liberate ourselves from our suffering, to find liberation from suffering. When we look at this from the perspective of yoga being a tool for us to release these learnings that we have around us, what people tell us we should be, what people tell us who we are, how we need to behave. Like, yoga is more than just an exercise. It's literally like enlightenment almost. Yeah.
It's a journey back to the self, I feel like. And so you're shedding off those expectations of what people are telling you. You're literally shedding all of that off to find those moments where you're just you.
And I love how you're saying liberation from suffering. It's something that my husband says a lot. As a joke, our words aren't jokes in a sense. And he's,
the good old just kidding.
I always suffer. Our life is suffering. Granted, he's a cradle Catholic, so that's what he was taught in a sense. Mm-hmm. And it's a joke, but very much I just suffer. I'm like, but you don't. Like, in some ways, yeah, but your life is not like actual suffering. And when we look at the different practices, because this is a spiritual practice, how this is liberation from suffering. And then there's like others of, you're meant to suffer. We are here because we have done bad things. It's just so, the energy around that is just so drastically different. It's more.
Well, I think at some point we have to ask, at what point are we causing our own suffering?
Yeah, that's a huge accountability question that you probably should not dive into today, because that's like a whole
There's
episode.
many layers
of,
to that one.
It's an onion.
We need
upon
more than
onions.
one episode. We need more than one episode for that.
Very much so.
But it is true though. When we look at yoga from like the 8 limbs of yoga, right? We have 8 limbs. That's not just one. One of them is asana. One of them is the posture, but we have so many of them. We have the yamas, we have the niyamas, which is the ethical aspect of yoga. And then we have the breathwork, pranayama, we have asana, we have dharana, we have dhyana, which is concentration and withdrawal, sense withdrawal. And then we have finally samadhi, which is bliss. Like we're working throughout, it's not step by step because so many things are interweaved towards each other, but at the end of the day, it's like going through this whole practice to see like, how can we find that bliss in our life? How can we find that contentment with our life, samadhi? And one of the really big themes of my life is from the niyama, which is the second limb of yoga. So the niyama is like internal observation, and it's called svadhyaya, which means
I love that, svadhyaya.
Svadhyaya, which means self-study or self-mastery. Because the more we are able to look at ourselves and study where we have like beliefs of suffering, or look at where we are sabotaging ourselves, or where we have relationships that might not be healthy, but we stay in them knowing that they're not healthy and why we have that kind of patterning. So the more we study ourselves, the more we are able to really master our joy, master our peace, and find bliss in our life.
So it sounds like that the Western society has only taken what, asana? And then that's yoga? It's because I don't think I've yoga, but I didn't. But not really. They don't get into it. It's more like you breathe with your movements, but they don't like...
Yeah, well, like there's the whole breathwork practice, and so I feel like they've taken pranayama and then made it into
its own thing.
This makes sense.
They don't integrate. I feel like breathwork
it's like
and yoga...
an asana breathwork version. It's like it's an intense workout breathwork from pranayama, but it's not that.
Yeah. It could be. I think it's very interesting, like how we take all of these parts of yoga and make it like into a workout. And when I look at that, I'm like, okay, that's also just a reflection. If we self-study ourselves as a society,
hustle culture.
It goes back to that. It's okay, why does everything have to go on one extreme? And now maybe you've seen it, but like the movement around inviting more rest into our life, it's like it's building up. People are like, we need to rest. Like rest is still productivity, because we have to train the brain to like remember that we have to be productive, but rest is also productive. It's okay to take a step back. We need to go a little bit more to the other side and find that balance, I feel.
The best yoga advice that I have had from you is to take a 25 minutes of asana, which is where you lay down on the floor and just ground, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's because I do have a very busy day. So that was a way for me to connect and remind myself. So yes, it's definitely not all hustle culture.
That one, and
working out.
I like the other one that Munirah that told me was to take one pose and just stay in that one pose and feel out that one pose.
Feel the juiciness of it. Yeah. That's good. I feel like in yoga, we get told you have to stay in a certain position, but there's so much more juice when you're like moving around and stretching in different ways in that one position that feel really good for you.
And I get impatient too, because I'm like, when someone's leading it and we're here forever, and I'm like, dude, I'm done. Why are we? I'm downward dog. Like, I want to go up.
Blood is all in my head. We're good now.
Can we go up now? So it's very important for me to be like, for that just to be the only thing. Because if I have an expectation of there's a beginning and an end to this, I'm ready to like move through this, versus nope, you got stuck with downward dog today. I don't have it with me, a little cube that has yoga poses on it that you can roll, and it can tell you like what the yoga pose is that you can do for the day, that I got from a friend of mine in Ukraine, that I don't use it often enough, and now I'm calling myself out for using it. I need to use it.
Yep, that's your That's your personal challenge this week.
Love it. Please do it. Okay, so I just also wanted to share something. Yesterday I went to an ecstatic dance event, and I'm not I used to be like into techno and house music, electronic music. Now not so much. But mostly when we go to an aesthetic dance or conscious dance events, this is like the kind of music that they play. I found myself at one point of time, the music, I was just not vibing with the music. And I was like, just moving, chilling. And I'm like, oh, when I noticed my thought, like, oh, I can't wait for the next song. I can't wait for the next song to come up so then I can move and enjoy. And then I realized, wait a minute, is this how I live? Is this how I'm living my life? Is there a part of me that I'm going to not, like, I'm in this moment that I'm in, I'm going to maybe not enjoy it because I'm going to wait for something better to arrive. Because then I'm like, I'm going to enjoy the future, but I'm not like really fully enjoying the now.
Oof, that's
because I don't like it.
Yeah, because I'm like, I'm not vibing. Yeah, or it's boring, or it's normal, and there's nothing to look forward to. So what can I, let me just stay here and be passive and then wait for things to happen. And so then I realized I had that thought. And then while I was dancing, I was like, okay, Munirah, like, all right, perhaps this is how there are parts of you that's living life like this. And how can you, and that to me was like weaving back that practice of yoga happens in the now. Transformation happens in the now, like constantly self-studying, constantly is also, I feel like hustle culture. So not constantly, but more than I used to do.
So how has your awareness with this practice of tuning into your body more helped you become more connected with your body in the sense of loving on yourself and feeling yourself and like that kind of thing? Because you say, I might give myself a hug today and that kind of thing. But I feel like it takes us a while to not only have the intention of what does my body need, but to actually like then go forth and do that further. I'm going to love myself. I'm going to do these things. Yeah. What do you think your transition was with that, of just being able to actually be with your body?
Yeah, it took a long time. I began practicing yoga for looking good, for having like toned abs and like being flexible and having strength and all the poses that I want to achieve. And that was fine. I didn't know better. And that was how my journey with yoga began. But then when I moved to Germany, I felt the rug was pulled under me. And I had an identity crisis, basically. I was, first of all, very naive to think moving away and staying abroad in a new place was going to be like magical all the time, super fun, and nothing is going to bother me. But it was really tough. First of all, the language, just not being able to understand anyone and people speak English here, come on. But just not being able to communicate just felt so weird for me. And then, so I had this whole being away from my family, being away from like comfort zone, moving to a new place, trying to figure out like, how do I belong in this new community? And I felt like, looking back, it triggered a lot of nervous system response. So like my nervous system was in a state of stress all the time. And I think that also led to like autoimmune illnesses, being diagnosed with a chronic pain and all of that stuff. And so that's when I actually discovered the softer side of yoga through yin yoga and restorative yoga. And I remember practicing with yoga with Cassandra in my home because there were no English speaking classes in my city. And so I would practice with her and we would be like all in these poses and she would be the one that would, give us the affirmations to say. So for example, we are in one pose and we're there for 3 to 4 minutes and she would say, all right, you might say to yourself here, I forgive myself. Or I let go of my pain. Or whatever. I honestly cannot remember. But she said a bunch of stuff. And I remember I would cry during and after each session because it just felt so deep. And no one had ever told me that I could do that. Like I didn't even know such a practice existed. So she basically gave me this insight on like yoga for the emotional and physical body, right? Because we're in a shape, we're going to stay there for 3 to 4 minutes. We're going to see what comes up. What is our resistance in the shape? What is our mindset? How are we speaking to ourselves, especially when it's a challenging shape? Like even though we're on the floor, we might be pulling the hips towards the chest. You might start to feel some back pain, right? In yin yoga, you never want to feel pain, but you do want to feel some discomfort because we're getting into the fascia, into the deeper layers of the muscles. And this is when we're in that discomfort, it's when our breath will start to quicken It's when our mind and our fears, basically thoughts from that fear part of our brain, will come up and be like, you're going to injure yourself. How can you do this to yourself? You don't care about yourself. And then just noticing the thoughts that come up. And so that's when I started realizing, okay, like I had a lot of unkind thoughts to myself. They were not friendly. And then especially like having a chronic illness, going to the doctor, going to the hospital, people would tell me, your body is fighting you. Like your body is fighting you. And so listening and taking it in without that practice of mindfulness, I was like, oh my God, like why am I doing this to myself? Why is my body doing this? And at one point of time, I felt if I'm having all of this stuff, like I shouldn't even be alive. Why am I alive? I went through this phase where I didn't feel like I deserve to be on earth. If I'm so sick, like why am I here? And that was a very scary place. But now with the knowledge of learning a little bit more about yoga from this very deep transformational aspect, I could see that it's from the root chakra. So the base of our body, our groundedness. And then those of you who are listening, chakras are like basically your energy centers in your body. We have 7 of them. And the base, which is the lowest part of your body, so at the base of your spine and into your feet, it's the root chakra, Muladhara. And this is the space where we see ourselves as having the right to be, the right to exist. So when I started practicing like yin yoga and I saw Cassandra doing yoga, I started to learn, okay, I don't have this belief. Like, I don't think I'm deserving to be here. And then so her affirmations around, I belong. My body loves me. I love my body. So this really helped to start to shape my mind around how I see myself, how I believe that I can be here because I can feel my body touching the ground. I can feel my feet on the floor right now. I can feel my hip bones sitting on the chair. I can feel the clothes on my skin. Like that practice of, okay, I'm here, I'm in my body and I belong. And it took some time. It really did. And again, it's still something that I'm constantly practicing. Yoga practice, not yoga perfect. So it's always a practice to remember I'm in my body.
How has yoga helped with, or I guess I shouldn't even say that because I don't know the answer to that. How has yoga impacted your relationship with your body and your chronic illness? Has it helped your pain, ease your pain, or make it more livable, for lack of a better term? Because I'm familiar with chronic pain and it just, sometimes it gets so bad, like you said, you don't even like, why am I even here? So I'm hoping in some way that it's eased that pain.
I feel like the first practice was to realize that I am in pain and that it's okay to not give my 100% to whatever it is that I needed to give my 100% for, or I thought I needed to give my 100%. For example, let's take it to the yoga practice. Going to a class, especially if the teacher doesn't explicitly say, hey, this is your practice, meaning you can modify as you need to, you can rest whenever you need to. And if the teacher doesn't explicitly say that, sometimes we as social beings, we tend to have this feeling of, oh, I need to do everything that the teacher says. I need to do everything that the leader, the person like with authority says, because this is the space and I don't want to be left out. I don't want to be called out for doing something different. So with practicing yoga and realizing that I can give myself permission to slow down, I can give myself permission to rest. Like my body is telling me that I need to rest. It's basically in a state of overdrive and I need to bring it back to the center where the nervous system is relaxed. And beyond that, it's also noticing on the days where I wake up and I have like my shoulder, I can't move because my joint is in pain, or I have ankle pain, or right, like last week with my lower back pain. It's also realizing like, where am I pushing myself? Why is this happening? And what can I do to make sure that it doesn't happen again? Like, why was I in a state of pushing my body to the point that I injured myself? What was my intention around that? Was I in being mindful? And then again, it goes back to that svadhyaya, the self-study. Like, why did what happen?
Yeah. I feel like hearing you talk, it sounds like this has helped you understand the language that your body is speaking so that you could meet the needs and where you're at. So it's not so much the yoga fixed it, it's you learned how to communicate with your body and adapt to your personal needs.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how it is. It's having a relationship with myself, basically. Every day waking up, my body will say something, but it's whether or not I want to listen and honor it. Even and you all know this, right? We are menstrual beings, and on each part of our cyclical journey, we will feel a different way. And I've started practicing tracking my cycle for the last 6 months or so. And I also noticed, okay, when I wake up, I'm like, whoa, yeah, woohoo, I'm like full of energy and just happy vibes. And that's when I'm like, okay, like today feels good. Like, I track my cycle, so I get to know my body, and I'm like, okay, this is what's happening on the inside, stuff that I cannot see, but this is happening. And then some days I wake up and I'm like, oh no, I don't feel 100%. And then that's when I'm like, okay, so my body is saying today is a slow day. Today is maybe a ceremonial cacao day. Today maybe it's just yoga nidra, lying on the ground, listening to meditation, and that's it. Nothing intense. And I also plan my whole social life around this. I plan like whatever I'm going to do around when I would probably have most energy. And that helps me so much. And it makes me feel like I love myself. It makes me feel like, yes, I'm the most important person in my life. And therefore I'm doing all of this. And then because of that, it just continues to deepen this trust that I have between me, my body. And I guess at the end of the day, it's also my intuition. Like I can tell like what I need because it's so deep. And it continues to deepen.
I want to go back to what you said about, not having to show up 100%, because I feel that so much, especially whenever we have these high expectations and we perform them really well for ourselves. Speaking about myself personally, my expectations are outrageous for myself, and I do an amazing job of keeping up with them. Should I? Probably not. But whenever I was in my lowest in the beginning of my first trimester, I felt like shit. Not just like my body did, yes, but also my self-worth felt like that. Like I didn't feel like it was, like I was doing enough. I was good enough in that sense. And something my therapist talked about with me was, you have to lower what your 100% is because you are giving your 100%. So for me, it was very much of, instead of just, I'm not going to be my 100%, it was, no, I am my 100%. My 100% is just lowered because that's where I have to be right now.
I'm at my 100% for today.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Reassessing that every day.
That's also redefining success for yourself, which is something we talked about in the past episodes. I love how this aligns really well. It's just, what does success look for? Even asking yourself that question, what does success and 100% look like for me today in this very moment?
I love that. I also saw an Instagram quote that said, on the days where you feel 40% and you give 40%, remember that you gave your 100%. It's all now. At the end of the day, it's really just our perspective. How do we see this? And not being victims of capitalism.
Oh my gosh, that's a huge one. So much deconstruction. Whole different podcast episode for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I'll talk about it again. I think once again, then plays into yoga as well, because it's just the money around that.
And it's so interesting too to see how, because being on this podcast and being in the spiritual community, I've gotten the opportunity to speak to many yoga teachers who. It's so interesting to see the difference between how capitalism has morphed yoga and then meeting people who actually embody yoga. Mm-hmm. Those are two completely different things.
Yeah.
It still blows my mind. I know we've touched on it a little bit already, but it's so wild to me. I used to think I was practicing yoga. I was not.
You were practicing for what you knew, right?
Yeah, I was working out. I'll be honest. I was doing it because I wanted yoga to fix my problems, and that's not the way to approach yoga. Yoga is not there to fix your problems. You're there to fix your problems. Yoga is a tool to help you.
That also goes into our lives too. Of then, are we expecting other people to fix our problems too?
Yeah, and that's actually, I'm so glad you said that, because that came to me when you were talking about that music. You're like waiting for that next song. Like, how often are we waiting for something else to be the answer, for that external validation versus looking inward of what medicine do I need to give myself today?
For sure.
I love that.
How many of us are guilty for jumping to the next trend and being like, that's the thing that's going to fix my thing inside,
Yeah.
the depths of emptiness?
I'm guilty of jumping to the next track when I'm listening to music in general. I'm like, I don't want this, I'm good.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
And finding that one. And so, like, being called out of, should I just be in this music because that's what came up?
Well, so I think there's a difference between following curiosity and jumping to things. I like to think about it in marketing, right? When we see the way really we're manipulated in society, there's constantly ads, take this pill, this quick fix. And so we're almost ingrained that there should be a quick fix for everything we do. And so we look for that external thing to give us that quick fix. Spoiler alert, there are no quick fixes. Good luck.
No quick fixes. I feel like, although to be fair, like when we do a breathwork practice or we do like a dance, like shamanic shaking, I do feel like the immediate effects of it. Like I do feel like that sense of like release, and sometimes tears come out. And even yesterday with dancing, like at one point of time, I was like, oh, this is what they mean by ecstatic dancing, because I felt this surge of emotions around my heart and I felt like I was almost going to cry. But we go back again to like, how do we take the message and the lessons from that and apply it to the rest of our day and really embody it? I think that's the key word, Alyssa. You said embodying it versus just like doing it.
And I would also agree with in the sense of not just doing it one time for that one thing, right? Oh, I'm going to go do my breath work really quickly and go do this because I need it in this moment or something, but not like having a continuous practice where you're tuning in with it. You're looking for the quick fix from it versus I'm connecting because I know I need it in this moment. Like it's also like the
difference
behind that.
between it's the difference between also how Western society thinks of medicine, right? We only go to medicine when we're sick versus doing things to prevent illness, prevent from not feeling good. And these practices are like that. If you integrate them and embody them in your daily life, you can prevent and learn how to navigate difficult situations versus waiting until you're in the tough spot and have to use it.
Yeah. I still feel though, just because with this chronic illness, whenever I go to my doctors, it's never like what I could do to help me. It's always like, how can we fix this? And it's like going, if the current medication doesn't work, it's immediately, let's try the next one. And when I try, I think it's also so difficult because not everyone practices this sense of the world and our life is a magical thing that allows us to discover more ourselves and to truly live. And not everyone has it. The doctors that I speak to, they just don't get it. They're like, no, why do you want to try that? Just take this next medication. They don't understand. And it's
so infuriating.
It's frustrating, yeah.
And that's why I enjoy Ayurveda, because basically the beginning steps are the same for everyone based on your life. Check your routine, check your water intake, check, what you're giving to yourself and like those kinds of things for everyone. That is the beginning steps in Ayurveda to balancing yourself, not just for when you're not feeling well, but in general, just to balance yourself. So then you have a foundation to work from to go into, okay, why are you out of balance and that kind of stuff. It's always starting with how's your routine? When are you going to bed? When are you waking up? When are you eating food? When are you getting outside? Like those kinds of things.
Getting to bed is such a big topic in my life. It's been years since I've had sleeping issues, honestly. And now I've really trained myself to believe and embody. If I don't sleep early, I'm stealing from the day tomorrow. I'm stealing from myself the next day. And it's been a game changer. One thing that really 100% game changer for me is I'm using like an acupressure mat before I go to sleep. And I'm just lying there for 20 minutes and it hurts, but it's good.
It hurts so good.
It hurts so good. But it's just like having that routine because we always have, like society just says, check your morning routine. Like, how do you wake up? What's your ritual? When you're doing coffee, are you writing? Are you journaling? Are you meditating? And we don't really speak so much about the nightly routine, except what I always say, it's like your phone in the next room, put your phone in the next room or read a book or start calming down an hour before, switch off
turn off the
TV.
lights. Yeah.
Put on your the blue light glasses thingy. But for me, it was never like this mindfulness practice before we go to bed. It was like still doing things, close the lights, do this, read a book, put your phone away. But how do we really get in the body, like to just feel that groundedness. And for me, it's been like the Shakti, this acupressure mat. Game changer. Love it.
I need a link to this.
One thing I used to do in the mornings.
No, I'm kidding.
One thing I used to do in the mornings was check my pulse and come back to my pulse. Because in Ayurveda, you can check what your baseline is and then where you are now. And so I would, in the mornings, know what my baseline is, always get, and then come back to like, where's my pulse now? Let me bring it back to Vata or whatever. Let me bring it back to what my baseline is and bring them together and mesh them together. And also a way of like just tuning into my breath and my pulse for 5 minutes or something.
I love
As
that.
Alyssa does it.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I'm trying to remember what the different fingers are. We can touch on that later, but that's one thing I've noticed, and it's funny that you brought that up. I have an Aura ring, hashtag not sponsored, but I love it, and it takes my temperature and my heart rate throughout the day. And I've noticed that my heart rate is it gets to a restful state during the day when I'm working, which is ironic for me, but when I'm sleeping, I'm having elevated heart rates, which is backwards. So I'm having to like think of ways that I can counteract that because I'm getting a lot of warnings. It's your heart rate was not great last night. I'm like, okay, cool.
Almost like you're more relaxed when you're working because you almost don't want to do it. So your body's like in
checked
a state of like rest, right? I want to sleep. I'm trying like that kind of thing. And I would say that for someone who's good at certain things like you, it is relaxing because Alyssa does a lot of technical stuff. And so it's like monotonous things that can just be more relaxing in some ways.
It is. It's things I know how to do and I can just go through and do it. Yeah. Listen to some music.
I also feel like just from my experience with chronic pain and autoimmune illnesses, like I realized I could not let my body rest. Rest was like a dangerous thing. And I'm not used to that. I'm like, no, what rest? No, I have to like be doing things. And so sleep was never deep, and which is also why I had issues with sleeping because I just didn't allow myself to take a pause. And sometimes like having this desire to fall asleep but not being able to sleep comes from like that belief I'm not entitled to rest. I cannot rest. And it's all about that nervous system regulation, right? How can we come out of that state of stress, of fight and flight, into that state of rest and digest? Usually we can do that with our breath, but a lot of the times, like the breath may not be enough and we need extra grounding. So for example, like for me, I realized I love to have like thick pillows and thick blankets, and it's like sleeping and just like having this sense of something grounding me down, and it feels like I'm getting into that root chakra. Like it's okay to just be. It's okay to just exist. It's fine. My body is here. My body is safe. And like doing that that's why the Shakti, the pressure mat is so great, because it's like bringing me back into my body, regulating my breath. And then I have the blanket over me, and it's just some music that I'm playing, and I'm really allowing my nervous system to settle down. And that allows me to have nowadays really good sleep. Like I actually get to sleep really well. And perhaps that could be that feeling of like your heart rate being elevated. It's like, how can we find even more groundedness, even when we're not awake?
I wasn't prepared for coaching today, but I hear you. I also feel like you unlocked a story in me too that I didn't realize I had of I need to be constantly doing while I still can. And I feel like that does come from having chronic things go wrong. And my back was out for so long. So while I'm feeling good, I need to do all the things because I'm not going to feel good tomorrow, or I may not feel good tomorrow.
And it's almost like saying a mantra while you're in bed. I am worthy of rest. I'm worthy of going to sleep right now. I'm worthy of having a full night's rest. It's like saying those mantras that you need while you're in bed, almost like using a mala bead, saying them over and over to where it feels just almost monotonous, but you become so in tune with it that it lulls your body into a sense of safety.
I'm sure you could find even, because I don't know if they have one on this specifically, but I love listening to, what are they called? A beautiful chorus, a beautiful choir.
Yeah.
A beautiful chorus.
A beautiful chorus. Wonderful artist. It's a group of people, I believe. Definitely check them out. But they do a lot of affirmation-based songs. And sometimes I'll find one and I'll just put it on repeat right before I go to bed. Because I have issues like like mentally repeating a mantra over and over again. I love finding little things like that to help reintegrate it in case I get out of the habit.
I think it's also,
I feel like sometimes when you say affirmations, it doesn't feel good. But when there's music and it's being told to me, it resonates better.
There's also, I think it was Snoop Dogg who has affirmations for kids. On
oh my gosh, I love that.
Or tap into Morgan Freeman's affirmations, like hear his soothing, relaxing
Morgan
voice.
Freeman has affirmations?
Oh, I didn't know that.
You are calm, and it's just like, yes, I am.
Yeah, I am. I believe you 100%.
Thank you for that.
It's so funny that we talk about this because I notice when I wake up, I'm like jolted up awake. And before I was like, oh, I need to go and do something. And now I realize it's honestly just cortisol. Like the stress hormones in my body like just shoots up. And it's, okay, I gotta be awake. And now the affirmation when I wake up is, it's okay. I can still rest. Like I don't have to immediately wake up. I get to go back to sleep. I get to sleep. Which is
fun fact too. Like we have that natural cortisol increase when we wake up. But if the first thing you grab is your phone or a screen, it's going to further increase your cortisol, and which will actually feed into an afternoon crash because you will have exerted all of your cortisol levels and you actually have a cortisol crash halfway through your day. A fun fact for my Magic Weavers, if you're having a midday crash, could be from your cortisol levels.
Are you saying that we have
this.
Like limited amount of cortisol throughout the day that we like essentially
I wouldn't
use
say
up?
limited, but I wouldn't say we have a limited amount, but we can overexert how much we're producing at one time. And so then our body rests and builds more for later use. Does that make sense?
100%. Like if you go back to the stress, like to your nervous system, right?
It's
like
a hormone producing something. You have to have it to
100%,
produce. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we have that state of stress, like we have the state of fight and flight and rest and digest. And if we are just constantly, like with cortisol, it's like we are in the state of fight and flight. We have to do something, like our blood is moving around faster in the body. The muscles start to get activated. Your eyes start to dilate and you're ready to get stuff done. And this is what it means by that burnout, because if we just keep being in this state, the body thinks that's the normal state, and it doesn't realize that, and it doesn't even know how to step back. And so it keeps trying to stay there, and it keeps being in that state. And that's when the kind of like the overall burnout happens, the overall like crash and autoimmune illnesses, other things that happens in the body when we have too much stress.
It makes me think of essentially ADHD, of how I'm like, okay, I'm tired. I have more energy now. Okay.
And I'm tired.
Like it literally feels like that. The little spikes and roller coaster of ADHD of like, I have so much energy. Yeah.
And then you're asleep. It's fine. I also wanted to point out too, because I feel like this is a belief we all tell ourselves a lot, is that being in that stress portion of our nervous system is bad. It is not bad. It is about the balance between rest and digest and stress. We can harness that stress energy and get things done. But then when it's time to rest, give yourself that permission to rest so that you can utilize the both parts of you that exist and need to. I almost feel like we're going to get into a whole different topic here, but I almost feel like that is balancing the masculine and feminine, really, is we literally do that in our nervous system.
But I feel like it's also that stress feeling equates to getting things done. Like, I can't get things done when I'm not at that level. Like, if my body's calm,
true,
obviously. Yeah, exactly. Like, if my body's calm, obviously I'm not doing anything. Because I should be feeling that level, because we're just so used to that being
I get so much done in my rest state.
Yeah.
I work for 10 hours in a rest state. It's fine.
My rest state is actually when I have heightened levels.
It's really wild how many people believe that the stress state is like their natural state. Like they don't even realize that they're in that state of the inside, like physiologically, that they're in like a state of stress. They don't realize it. And this is something I definitely see in like yoga spaces. Like people love it because it brings them out of that state. And then again, we need to like, how do we not live our life constantly in that, in the state of stress? And how can we like find that remember we talk about that 1 hour of your day practicing yoga and you feel great? Like how can we bring that to the other times of our day where we don't necessarily feel like we've got we've got that connection with ourselves.
Tara is deep in thought. I see the
I'm just thinking
gears
of like
turning.
having something in your pocket or in your hand or something that helps you be more mindful, like a crystal or something like that. Yeah, like that.
What do you say?
Crystals.
Like having something that helps you be more in the present, mindful. Like you grab a crystal for the day. My intention is to, when I touch this, to think about being out in the sunshine and joy and just taking a deep breath. And so if you put your hand in your pocket, or if you're fiddling with something, you touch it and you're like, okay, there's my reminder. That's kind of what it made me think of having that. Because we can set our
Is that going to be our
phones and
challenge?
stuff. Maybe. Because I'm very much into... Go ahead, Munirah.
Are you on a challenge? I've heard this word challenge a couple of times. Is there a challenge going on?
No, so at the end of every episode, we love to give our magic weavers a challenge, something for them to integrate and take away. So I was just thinking, that would be a good one.
Because I feel like I'm very much of I agree and understand with technology, but for certain things I don't do is like wearing my watch when I sleep, because I don't want the technological thing like going through me at night. That's my personal thing. My husband still does, and it still shines on my face, so it probably doesn't actually matter because it's still right there beside me. So I like to think of ways that I can like be more intentional with myself without having the reminder that's technological and brings me back to the groundedness, because it's easy to have that. I feel like for me, when my reminder is like a beep, 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 and I do this, it jolts me out of my present. And I want to be more in my present. So for me, my challenge would be like being present and having something that's tactile to keep me in that moment versus shifting out of it, because I need to stay in the moment more so. So yeah,
I've been using alarms, not annoying alarms. I've been doing this for a while. I've been in and out of practice with this, but I really love this practice of setting it to Spotify playlists, because I can connect my alarms to my Spotify. So it plays a playlist. It depends on what mood I'm going for. So if it's during the day, I want my house, no shade taken, Munirah, house or techno or dance type music. And then when I get in the evenings, I do more like beautiful chorus or affirmations or restful music to remind me the different types of pauses I need to make during the day.
Yeah, but like also,
I love
you
that.
need to be taken out of your present in a sense.
I do, because I get so lost in my project. That's why it's so
different for everybody, because I don't want that, because I don't need it. And that's something Alyssa needs, is to be out of the present, because it needs to be like, okay, come back to the body, even though you're already in the body, but like in a deep and like meditative state. There's a lot to that.
It's an onion. Lots of onions today.
It's 100%. I feel like also, just because this is all like, so with Alyssa having the alarm and Tara, you having the crystal, I feel like if you're already doing it and then you're going to make it more mindful, then it works. Like it's easy. But if it's something new, I find that people will forget, because it's creating a new habit. If I don't carry a crystal, I'm taking a crystal, it might not feel like that connection for me. And so my share here would be, look at your day-to-day life, what you are already doing, and then choose that to be your mindfulness point. So for me, it could be I drink tea a lot. Like I'm drinking tea all the time. So I'm taking my tea time as my mindfulness practice. Or if I desire, like for example, I'm obsessed with like lip gloss nowadays. So maybe a reminder is every time I put on the lip gloss, my desire and my intention is to remind myself that I am beautiful no matter what. I am gorgeous and I am shining from within, and I love how I look.
Luscious.
And that's yeah. I'm luminous.
Well, and I would also add to like, where do you fidget throughout the day? What is the thing that you touch and grab onto? If it's a necklace, can you shift it? Because in Ayurveda, we don't want to take something away. We want to just replace it, or within habits as well. You want to replace it versus taking it away or adding something entirely different. So if you constantly fiddle with a necklace, maybe intentionally putting a certain necklace that you can feel more tactile. If you're twirling your hair, maybe you have something in your hair that's, oh, I can feel this. This is a barrette. Oh, okay.
Oh, and I love having a braid underneath your hair. When my hair was long, I would play with that. That was definitely a big thing that I
Or like if I'm with my fingers, maybe I have nails and I'm like, oh, there's a nail here. Or like a ring. Or something that if you're already doing something, because I typically fidget with my fingers or that kind of stuff. So having something to twist around is great for crystals. But it's definitely bringing it back to like what is good for you. Especially if you fidget all the time.
And I want to point out here, and this is a technique I use in my coaching practice. I have all of my clients create a safety box that is literally all of your favorite things that go to all 5 of your senses. Your favorite candy, your favorite thing to touch, maybe a coloring book, whatever it is, so that you have something that applies to one of your senses. So I think what we're seeing here is we each have a different sense that is a home base for us. For me, it's sound. I need to hear the music. I need to feel the music, whereas you need to actually touch and hold something. You need that crystal to play around and fidget with. I know what yours is, Munirah. I don't remember if you said or not.
I feel like I love to feel, like it's like
taste.
And
tea.
it's not just, yes, it's the taste, but I love the feeling of warmth on my hands. It's just like that connection with my hands.
And we could also get into how that might go into the intuition and the types of magic that we have.
New episodes on the way. Munirah, we have to have you back.
I'm so excited.
We have like 4 episodes from this one episode that we're going to have to go on tangents. It's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
I do agree.
Excited.
I do agree that the challenge for this week is something around finding out like what your thing is, your fidget thing, the thing that you do to kind of distract yourself or bring yourself back, right? Either in that way. And then finding a way to make that intentional for you to bring you back to your body, to bring you back to your present moment, or like Alyssa, to take you out of that and bring you into what your body actually needs, right? To shift it up for you. We'll have that in a more concise sentence later.
Yeah, keep posted in the show notes. You can look there. Our socials, we always post the challenge as well. I look forward to seeing what everybody does. Definitely share with us. This concludes another episode of our Weaving Magic podcast.
We release 1 episode a week, so be sure to subscribe to catch the latest episode as soon as it releases. You can find us on Instagram at Weaving Magic Podcast. That's Weaving Magic, MAGICK Podcast.
We would also love it if you could leave us a review. If you do, make sure to email us your review so we can send you a thank you gift. Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to find a way to weave magic into your daily life.